What is up, guys? Bobgar here, and part of trying to be slightly lower effort on these videos is not doing full-fledged deck text where I lay everything out nicely in a slideshow. So I'm just going to go through the deck here on MTG Goldfish real quick, just because this shows the prices so you can see. It's about $19 online, $100 in paper. This week we're going to be playing Aura Hexproof, also often called Bogles. I originally didn't name it Bogles because I didn't have Bogle in it, but I decided the extra $5 is fine. Like this and Rancor I had chopped. You can definitely play it without them if you wanted to get it around $10. I think it would make it a little bit cheaper in paper as well, probably 10 or 20 bucks. But I figured, what the heck, up the price a little bit to make it a little bit more competitive. And like I said, I think I'm gonna jam this into a league and see if I can actually hopefully go 3-2 in the league. This is a reasonably competitive deck, so I feel like 3-2 is not unreasonable, but it is very matchup dependent, so it will depend on the matchups we get. So let's start by looking at the creatures. The two 1-drops, Glade Cover Scout and Slippery Bogle, are basically functionally equivalent for us. They are 1/1s with Hexproof. Technically Bogle isn't Hexproof, although it's basically the same. It's basically the text from Hexproof, but it's probably been added to Hexproof actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, basically 1/1s with Hexproof for 1 green in our deck. And then there's one other creature. It basically helps us grind out grindier games and also can just get big and win on its own, especially good in matchups where our opponent is trying to not do disruptive things, when they're just trying to combo off or do something too. That is Core Spirit Dancer. These guys are a little expensive in paper. They're not that expensive online, partly just because the deck's not super meta right now. But super good cards. An 0-2 for 2, which isn't normally good, but it gets +2/+2 for every aura attached to it, and basically all of our other cards other than these 12 creatures are going to be auras. And then it also gets, whenever you cast an aura spell, so as soon as you do the cast trigger, even if they're countering it, you draw a card. So it's very good against very grindy decks too, especially if they're countering all your enchantments. You can still just draw through your deck, find more creature threats, find more enchantments to put on guys. So very powerful, worth the slot, I think. And then on to the enchantments. There's a total of 4, 8, 12, I think 22, I'm counting 1-drop enchantments. So the deck is super low to the ground, and we'll just go over them in order going down here. Called Cartouche of Solidarity. +1/+1 in first strike isn't bad, and then it also creates a 1/1 warrior creature token with vigilance. This is mostly in here to protect us against sacrifice effects like Liliana of the Veil, things like that. It's something that the deck is a little bit weak to in general, so I think running a couple of these main board is reasonable, and it's also just a relatively good enchantment, especially for 1 mana. I like it quite a bit. I think first strike is pretty important to get on our guys, especially in creature matchups, so helps us either swing through if we need to, or block in the early game if we need to, before we can build up a critical mass of these enchantments. Then next up is Ethereal Armor. This might, there's a lot of important enchantments in here, but this one might be the single most powerful. You would think Daybreak Coronet would be more important, which we'll get to later, but this one is what really helps us go over the top and blow people out in some matchups. It is a +1/+1 for every enchantment you control, or yeah, for every enchantment you control, whether they're on the creature or not. So, you know, if you play 3 enchantments, suddenly this thing is giving you +3/+3 and first strike for 1 mana, which is crazy good. And then as you play more, obviously this gets bigger and bigger. And if you get 2 on this thing, like, you pay basically 2 white mana to get +4/+4, you know. And then anyway, it gets out of hand quick, and the first strike is very relevant. So like I said, probably, at least for the 1-drop slot, I think probably the most important. Running 3 Griff's Boon. This helps us kind of do a lot of avoidance, sometimes blocking against decks with flyers that we really find we need to block, but for the most part we do it for the evasion. +1/+0 and flying, pretty nice. And then the fact that it can come back from our graveyard again is pretty nice if our opponent has a board sweeper that we can't handle or something like that. Just generally a pretty good card. For Hyena Umbra, so there's going to be 8 cards like this total that have totem armor. Basically helps us a lot against sweepers. That's another thing the deck is generally a little weak to, so you need, you know, you only have 1 or 2 creatures, and you need to make sure that they can survive. And a lot of making sure they can survive is making sure, you know, the few things that would kill them don't work. So the few things that would normally kill them, since they can't be targeted, are things that make you sacrifice them. And so that's, like I said, usually those are sacrifice a creature. If they sacrifice everything, you're going to be blown out. There's nothing you can do. But if they sacrifice a creature, their cartouche helps. And if they are like Wrath of God type things, Hyena Umbra helps, because if the creature will be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. So even gets around things like Wrath of God that don't allow regeneration, because it doesn't technically happen if they... it's not technically a regeneration, even though it acts a lot like a regeneration. So pretty good for that reason. And +1/+1 in first strike again. We have a lot of first strike in this, but first strike is pretty good. And then on to Rancor. Rancor is a green enchantment, +2/+0 and trample. Very important if we don't end up getting things like Griffspoon to let us fly. The opponent could gum up the ground with little creatures and we wouldn't be able to get through. This helps us get through. Also important because if it goes to our graveyard from play, it comes back to our hand, makes it pretty powerful. As you can see, it's one of the more expensive cards. Played in a few decks. It's definitely a very good card. There was some funny article posted a long time ago at this point, maybe I'll bring it up someday, that ranked it as the second best card in Magic. Which is obviously totally incorrect, but it is a very good card. So, then for Spider Umbra, a lot like Hyena Umbra, basically the difference is just instead of giving first strike, it gives reach. They're about the same in terms of how important they are to the deck. I actually think first strike is slightly more important, but they're both relatively important. Then the big Haymaker enchantment is Daybreak Coronet. Daybreak Coronet is 2 white mana, so it's a little hard on our mana base, but target creature gets +3/+3. Has first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. So that's a lot of text and a lot of pluses for 2 mana. The disadvantage is you have to enchant a creature with another aura attached to it. And if you're going all in on a single creature and you're trying to play this out early when your creature only has like 1 enchantment on it, you can get blown out from various things, because if that second aura ever goes away, this falls off immediately. So I'll speak briefly about the cases where this can go wrong. One case is you only have 1 enchantment on it. You try to play this on top of the creature. They have an instant speed destroy target enchantment. This comes, or even non-instant speed, it really doesn't matter. But basically they manage to destroy that other enchantment. This comes down, it fizzles, it goes away. So that would be bad. The other thing is a lot of our enchantments are this totem armor thing. If you play this on a creature with, the only other enchantment's the totem armor, they wrath, they get rid of the totem armor, then this falls off as well because you now don't have a second aura attached to it. So can be a little risky, but it's worth it because of how good it is, and we have so many 1-drop enchantments that it's really not hard for us to have at least 2 even on a creature. So tends to be very good. And then Spirit Mantle, a little bit more evasion, a little similar to Hyena Umbra here. Rancor does kind of a similar role in that it gives us trample, but this gives us protection from creatures, makes our guys amazing blockers, as well as letting us swing through all their defenders. So Spirit Mantle is pretty sweet. And that's basically the whole deck. Those are all the cards. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the lands. So the lands are basically where I had to go budget on this. This is pretty close to, in terms of the main deck, other than lands, a fully optimized Bogles build. But the lands are really where it comes in and we feel a little pain. So normally you'd be running a Dryad Arbor, which I'm not currently. So that's 1 point. And normally you would have fetch lands, I think shock lands, Razor Verge Thickets are okay. Those are the white-green fast lands. And then the big one is Horizon Canopy, which is one of the most expensive cards in Modern right now. So not running any of those, unfortunately. Just running a pretty budget mana base. A little over half our lands are basics. Those are 5 forests and 6 plains. And then slightly less than half are non-basics in 4 Fortified Village and 4 Canopy Vista. These are not the best non-basic lanes you could be running. They are just the cheapest non-basic lanes you could be running that I think provide enough upside to be worth it. The Fortified Village I could see arguments against, but I find they're pretty good. They usually come in untapped. They're not terrible, and if they come in tapped, it's not like the end of the world. And then Canopy Vista, kind of similar, I guess, in about the same state. They're not terrible too in that they let you bring in the Fortified Villages untapped, so every land other than Fortified Village lets you bring in Fortified Villages untapped. But it can be hard to get 2 basics to have Canopy Vista come in untapped, but it happens occasionally. I found this mana base is working out pretty well. I had it at 20, I went down to 19. It's possible it should still be at 20, but I am running a lot of 1-drops, and I cut my 1 3-drop, which was Unflinching Courage, which is also pretty good in the deck. You could run that. I haven't tested this build extensively. I was running Unflinching Courage and Keen Sense, and I upped my Grisboon and Cartouche of Solidarity count a little bit to try to make the deck slightly more aggressive. I think that'll pay off in some matchups, probably most, but maybe not all, so we'll have to play it out and see how it goes. And then sideboard, pretty straightforward stuff. I'm still running 2 Ghost Quarters and 2 Tormod's Crypts. Very good cards in the matchups. They're good. Ghost Quarters takes people off problem lands like, Tron lands are the big one. Valakuts. Any land that you're just going to have a lot of trouble answering, Ghost Quarters are pretty good against. Tormod's Crypt, again, against graveyard decks. You don't want it against all graveyard decks, but the decks that go really hard into the graveyard, you really want that Tormod's Crypt there to try to shut that out. One more Cartouche if we just know they're running Lilianas. We want to up our creature count a little bit, and this helps us do that. 1 Spirit Link if we're against like Burn or something. This is just another source of lifelink. We do have 4 Daybreak Coronets that give us lifelink, but it's not that much lifelink, so we definitely can get buried by Burn. So 1 Spirit Link for that. 2 Seal Primordial, deal with other people's artifacts and enchantments. Just a pretty good card. I have it in here over some of the other kill spells for enchantments because it does boost our ethereal armor. It does not trigger Spirit Dancer because it's not an aura, but it does benefit ethereal armor as we keep it on the battlefield. 3 Suppression Field. This is good against a lot of matchups, but activated abilities cost 2 more to play unless they're mana abilities. So Planeswalker abilities cost 2 to use. Fetch lands cost 2 to use. Things like Ravager cost 2 to use. Expedition Map. Things like a lot of the Tron things are relying on artifacts that do non-mana things. So pretty good there. Just an overall, a pretty good card in some matchups. Often worth bringing in if you have dead cards or cards that just aren't that great. 3 Oblivion Ring. So this is just kind of an answer anything. Pretty good. I just like it a lot. Nice to have another answer for Planeswalkers. Nice to have another answer for Planeswalkers, even though Suppression Field does get them a little bit. And then 1 of Retether. I don't see this coming in very often, but if we know our opponent is running something that literally, if they're just super grindy, if they have something that just destroys all enchantments at once or something, Retether can be worth it. Brings all of the aura cards from our graveyard back to play, and then obviously you're going to be able to attach them to creatures. So this is a single card that if our opponent really is on the get rid of all their enchantments plan, we can rebuild with a single card. So that's why that's in there. And so I guess that's the deck. I'm going to jump into some games and play it. Like I said, I'm probably going to do it inside of a friendly league, and hopefully we manage to do okay in that friendly league. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.